Hey everybody, welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to be breaking down the performance for the Ugreen PowerRoam 2200. Now, if you haven't heard of Ugreen before, I've been really impressed with their products in the past, and this one competes with all the top brands that are currently available. Now, I've done a ton of different testing on this power station, and I don't want to bore you guys with too many specifications, but let's break down some of the features and then we'll jump into the testing results. The PowerRoam 2200 has lithium iron phosphate batteries inside, rated at 2048 watt hours of capacity. This also has the ability to attach expansion batteries via the port on the side for up to 12 kilowatt hours of capacity. On the side of the power station, you have a 2400 watt pure sine wave inverter, and this also supports internal fast wall charging. I've also tested the UPS cutover time on this. It's the fastest that I've tested on the channel so far, and I'll be showing you guys that later in the video. If you want to charge via solar, this has dual MPPT solar charge controllers for up to 1200 watts of solar input. On the front of the power station, you have a 25 amp DC output, which is great for large loads. And this also has one of the fastest USB-C ports that I've tested at 140 watts output. Now, to top it all off, this also has smart app connectivity via Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Now, pricing is super important for a product like this, so let's go ahead and break that down. The MSRP for this product is $19.99, and at launch they had a $400 off discount code to bring the price down to $15.99, or about 78 cents per watt hour. Now, during Black Friday, which is currently active, this has a super low price of $13.99, or only 68 cents per watt hour. So really good prices for all the features that this product has. Now, for the remainder of the video, I'll be breaking down the performance numbers on the Ugreen 2200. There's going to be three main sections. We're going to test the AC inverter, we're going to test the DC output and USB ports, and we're also going to do a bunch of different charging demos. So hopefully I'll answer all the questions that you have about this power station. So let's go ahead and start with the first set of tests on the AC inverter. Remember, it is a pure sine wave inverter rated at 2400 watts output, so let's see how it does. First, let's verify the quality of the power that we get from the inverter. I started my first test by setting up a 2400 watt load to stress the power station. I like to make sure that nothing goes wrong as it's running at peak output. After the test had been going for a couple minutes, I checked the output with my oscilloscope. It was putting out a clean sine wave at 60 Hertz and 121 volts output. Once the test had been going for about 10 minutes, the power station fans were running at full speed. While measuring with my sound meter at 3 feet away, I was getting around 52 decibels of noise, and these are what the fans sounded like. Do these fans move enough air to keep the internal components from overheating? When using my thermal camera, I measured only 105 degrees near the fan exhaust port, so the fans work really well to keep things cool inside. After finishing those measurements, my stopwatch hit the 15-minute mark, and the Ugreen 2200 passed the max load test. Now, how many watts will the inverter allow you to pull before it shuts down from being overloaded? The inverter supported 2950 watts for about 30 seconds before it finally shut down. Does the power station inverter create any interference or noise when enabled? This test is helpful for people wanting to run sensitive audio equipment. Using my dirty electricity meter, the electromagnetic interference reading, or EMI, was really low at only 1040 millivolts of noise. I also tested with my guitar amp plugged into the inverter to see if the output would be affected. These results were excellent and the AC output was very clean. I also wanted to test what type of interference I would hear on a small handheld AM radio. With the AC inverter running, these were the results of the test.
I had a kidney stone and I had to get to the emergency room. I think I can get there on my own.
Because of the radio interference, I'd recommend keeping your equipment at least a couple feet away from the power station. Now, how fast is the UPS mode on the PowerRoam 2200? When it senses grid power going down, the power station automatically swaps over from wall power to using the batteries inside, and this is advertised to happen within 20 milliseconds. Using my oscilloscope, I was able to record the actual UPS cutover time. Looking closer, you can see I measured 9 milliseconds. This is the fastest UPS mode I have tested to date. To confirm it works well with a PC, I simulated 6 different power outages by unplugging the power station from the wall while running my desktop workstation, LED monitor, and studio lights. After multiple tests, the PC and monitor were still running after it was unplugged, so the UPS mode definitely works well on this power station. In the next test, I wanted to see how long the PowerRoam 2200 could run a full-size refrigerator. I started the test at 100% state of charge, and the power station ran for 29 hours and still had 5% of the capacity remaining before I ended the test. You could get even longer results by using solar panels to charge the power station or by connecting an expansion battery. How much usable capacity should you expect from the Ugreen 2200? The internal LFP battery is rated for 2048 watt-hours of capacity. When draining the power station down until it shut off, I was able to measure 1800 watt-hours. This result of 1800 watt-hours is 87.8% of the advertised capacity. Next, how much power is used as the AC inverter is enabled and sitting idle? I started with the power station at 100% state of charge and left the inverter enabled for 10 hours with no load. When I came back, it was sitting at 92% state of charge, meaning that the inverter had used 8% of the battery after a 10-hour period, or about 0.8% per hour. This power consumption is below average, which is a good sign for efficiency. Wow guys, really impressive results while testing the AC inverter. Even under max load of 2400 watts, we had a pure sine wave output, 121 volts at 60 hertz. And when it was running at that load, the fans weren't very loud at all. They weren't harsh, so definitely acceptable noise coming from these fans. Now, how about that UPS cutover time? 9 milliseconds. That is the fastest that we've tested so far on the channel. And we also got 87% on the capacity test, so you should expect good run times while using the AC inverter. Now, I know a couple of you are going to say, well, Jason, this doesn't have a 30 amp output like some other power stations on the market. Well, there are a couple adapters that make that really easy. I'll include the links to them down in the video description. This one right here plugs into a 15 amp outlet and it gives you a 30 amp connection. And this one right here plugs into a 20 amp outlet and gives you a 30 amp RV connection. So if you guys are looking to connect up to a transfer switch or to an RV power cable, there are really easy options to do that. So let's go ahead and start testing the DC output. I'm really excited to test that high amperage output to see how it performs. So let's jump into those tests. What voltage do you get from the DC output? I confirmed the DC output of the power room is regulated at 13.6 volts. This means that the output remains constant while using the power station. How much wattage can you pull from the DC ports? Connecting my load tester to the 12-volt cigarette plug, I pulled 160 watts continuously. While connecting to the 5521 barrel port, I was able to pull around 97 watts continuously. I also tried to pull power from both these ports at the same time, and I was able to pull around 255 watts without the power station shutting down. The Ugreen 2200 also has a separate 25 amp Anderson power pole output for higher DC loads. In order to test this port out, I connected up a small 300 watt inverter running an electric heater. I successfully pulled around 330 watts as the heater was running. I love that Ugreen decided to add the high DC output. It's great for van life builds or RV setups. One thing to note, I did notice that the configuration of the Anderson power pole is reversed to what I normally use. This isn't really an issue as the ends are swappable on most cables, but keep that in mind before you plug in your device. Now, how do the USB ports perform? This power station is a USB powerhouse. It supports one 140 watt, one 100 watt, and two 45 watt USB-C power delivery ports. There are also two additional 22.5 watt USB-A quick charge ports. To test out all the USB ports at the same time, I plugged in 3 different power stations, my River 2 Pro, my River 2, and my Energizer 320. I also connected a variety of other USB devices, and I was able to pull over 245 watts of power. While testing both the USB ports and the 12-volt output at the same time, I was able to increase the total power to about 460 watts from the power station DC output. Does the DC output shut off randomly while running loads overnight? In order to make sure that this wasn't an issue on the Ugreen 2200, I plugged in my Iceco Go 20 12-volt fridge into the 12-volt cigarette plug and let it run over the weekend. I came back after 36 hours and the DC output hadn't shut down and the fridge was still running. The state of charge was still at 89%, so the DC output is very efficient. How does the DC output affect a handheld AM radio? Here's what happens when you have a small radio next to the power station with the DC output enabled.
Amper was able to come back and get Colorado on Friday. First-year pro.
To avoid this interference, you'd want to keep your sensitive devices a couple feet away from the power station. How much usable capacity can we pull from the DC output as we discharge the power station? The Power Roam is advertised to have 2048 watt-hours of capacity, and while draining the power station completely down via 2 battery load testers in parallel, I was able to pull a total of 1,835 watt-hours over a 15-hour time period. These results were 89.6% of the advertised capacity, which is well above other power stations in this bracket. Now, how much power is used while the DC output is sitting idle with no load? I started the test at 100% state of charge, and checking in 10 hours later, it was still at 100% state of charge, meaning the DC output is very efficient and doesn't use much measurable power as it sits idle. Wow guys, impressive results while testing the DC output. First off, I love this 25 amp DC output. A lot of other companies are going away from that. Well, Ugreen answered, and they know the market needs this, and they added it on their power station. So huge thumbs up for them including that. Also, the fact that this has the newest 140 watt USB-C power delivery port. I don't even have a device that will test that much power, so I'm gonna have to purchase something in the near future. Now, thinking about the actual efficiency, we got 89% of the advertised capacity as we discharge this on the DC output. That was more capacity than the AC inverter, so that's just telling you that the DC output is super efficient. So really good performance on the DC output. You guys will have to let me know what you guys think about the DC output options on the Ugreen 2200. Now here on the side of the power station, there's a really cool feature as well. Now this is a metal mesh that allows you to filter the intake on the fans. Now my desktop computer has something very similar, and this stops a good amount of the dust. Now this is removable. You can easily take it off, clean it, and then snap it right back on. So really nice that they thought about this, because when these are in a dusty environment, they get quite a bit of dust going into the fan. So I like that they have this built-in filter. Now here on the side of the power station, we have the charging ports. It has this little flap right here. Now there is one downside to this flap. I think if you were to, drop something on this, it would break. So I would have liked to see this, maybe pop out and then slide in or something like that. But in the next section of the video, I want to talk about all the charging options on the 2200. So let's go ahead and break that down. Let's briefly talk about the charging cables that come with the power station. This cable is designed for 12 to 24 volt car charging. It comes with a cigarette plug and terminates in XT60. The next charging cable is an AC charging cable designed for charging with a gas generator or using a wall outlet in your house. Now, Ugreen also includes 2 series solar adapters in the box. So if you want to connect 2 solar panels, you can connect these 2 in series. And if you want to get higher voltage, you can actually unplug this here and connect a 3rd solar panel. And I like this cover here because it means that these adapters are safe. You don't have any exposed pins when you're using solar panels with this adapter. Now the charging ports for the Ugreen are located on the left side of the power station behind this flap. You have your AC input here with a circuit breaker. You have dual DC inputs. You have a grounding lug and a connection for expansion batteries. Now taking a closer look at each one of these ports, the AC charging port on top allows for 100 to 130 volts AC input with a limit of 15 amps or 1800 watts. Below that, you have dual MPPT solar charge controllers. Each one supports 12 to 60 volts input with a 15 amp limit or 600 watts. So with both those combined, you can get 1200 watts of DC input. Now on this flap here, you have all the specifications for the power station. I've also noticed that they have an ETL rating here, which is very similar to UL listing. It's gone through a bunch of safety tests to prove that this is a safe device. So let's move on to some charging demos. How fast will this charge at 12 volts? So with the charging cable connected to my 12 volt battery, we're seeing 100 watts input. Now, if the power station was completely empty, this would take around 20 hours to fill up. Now, because this has dual charging ports, what happens if you connect up 2 12 volt sources at the same time? Well, looking at the screen, we're getting 191 watts charging input. So we basically doubled the charging speed because we have 2 ports available. Now, I also wanted to simulate charging at 24 volts. So I have a 12 to 24 volt boost converter connected up to my battery, and I've plugged that into the power station. So at 24 volts, we're seeing around 186 watts charging input. Now I also want to show you guys what happens at 36 volts. So I have this massive 12 to 36 volt boost converter that I've connected up to my lithium iron phosphate battery. So using the 36 volt boost converter, we're charging at 425 watts on one port. Remember, there are 2 ports here, so you could definitely double this. Now what about charging off a 48 volt server rack battery? I've gone ahead and connected it up. Let's take a closer look at the screen. So on the screen, you can see we're getting 600 watts input. So we are maxing out one of the charging ports by connecting up the 48 volt battery. Now I wanted to see if we could max out both charge controllers with the 48 volt server rack battery. So let's see what we're getting on the screen. So we are seeing the full 1200 watts charging input by connecting the server rack battery to both charging ports. Now one thing I've noticed while testing with this power station, basically, anytime you connect up a voltage higher than 35 volts, you're going to hear a spark whenever it connects. Now, here's a demo of what it sounded like when I connected up my 48 volt battery. Now, if you look closely at my XT60 connector, you can see a couple of those char marks or burn spots from connecting it up to the charge controller. So it appears that Ugreen did not install pre-charge resistors on either of these charging ports, and that's why you see the spark if you have a higher voltage. Now there is a way around this. If you've seen these before, these are XT90 connections. They're bigger than XT60. And this green one here is called an anti-spark connection because it has a built-in resistor. So we have the 48 volt battery here, and you can see as we connect it up, you don't get a spark. Now this power station also features fast AC wall charging, and Ugreen calls it PowerZip technology. So with the AC charging cable connected, we're charging at around 1700 watts. Now this is definitely the fastest way to charge this power station, and it will charge in about an hour and a half or a little bit less while charging at these speeds. Now if you don't want to charge that fast, Ugreen does have a setting in the Smart app for quiet charging mode where it drops the charging speed from 1800 watts down to around 550. So the fans are basically silent during this charging mode, and it puts less stress on the batteries. Now, does this power station support dual charging, meaning that you can connect AC power and DC power at the same time and speed up the charging process? And does it give priority to DC input? Let's go ahead and see what's happening. So with both charging inputs connected, we're charging at around 1700 watts, which is the same that we saw with AC charging. Now, using my clamp meter to measure the current going through the DC input, we are seeing 0 amperage, so it is not charging with DC input. Now I wanted to check the 48 volt battery just to make sure we weren't getting any power. You can see that we have 0 current coming out of the battery while it's connected. So while dual charging, you do not get any priority to DC input. Now just to demonstrate, I've disconnected the AC power cable and left the 48 volt battery connected up, and we are charging at 600 watts again. So kind of a bummer that this does not support dual charging. Now what about pass-through charging, or the ability to charge and discharge the power station at the same time? I've enabled the USB ports, the DC output, and the AC inverter, and it's charging from a 48 volt battery. So we have a total of 390 watts going out to each of our loads, and we are charging the power station at around 600 watts via the DC input. So this does support charging and discharging at the same time. So how does the power station perform with solar panels connected? Can we actually get the full charging input? So I'm going to go ahead and discharge the power station a bit, then we'll take it outside and do some real solar demos. So we'll be testing with these 380 watt panels from Newpower, and we'll also be testing with a few of these Renogy 200 watt flex panels. Now as for the solar conditions today, it's a clear day with no clouds, just a little bit of haze. It's a late fall day, so the sun's pretty low in the sky, and it's around 40 degrees. So breaking down the information on these 3 Newpower solar panels, each of them is rated at 180 watts, and these are very unique panels because the VOC for each panel is under 20 volts. So when you wire all 3 of them together in series, the total voltage is under 60 volts VOC, so they are compatible with power stations with a 60 volt cutoff. Now I've put the Ugreen in my shed so we can see the display. Let's check the VOC and then see what wattage we can get. So the open circuit voltage for these 3 panels in series is 57.1 volts. Now keep in mind, it's a little bit cold outside today, so the voltage is a little bit higher than normal. So let's go ahead and connect it up and see what we get. Now I've gone ahead and connected the solar panels to the Ugreen power station. On the screen, we're showing 540 watts charging input. Now keep in mind, these panels are rated at 540 watts, so we are seeing the full rated power from these panels. So pretty impressive results, guys. Now I just wanted to check back in on the voltage so you guys understand that once you have a load going through the solar panels, the voltage drops down quite a bit. So remember, voltage open circuit was 57 volts, and now under peak power, we're seeing around 45 to 47 volts output. Now the next panels that I want to test on the power station are 3 of these Renogy 200 watt flex panels. Now be aware, the voltage open circuit is a little bit higher on these panels, so putting 3 of these in series is actually going to go over 60 volts. But I found out a really cool fact from the engineering team at Ugreen. They let me know that the total open circuit voltage that is allowed on the power station is 75 volts. So what I want to do is connect 3 of these panels together in series. We're going to check the open circuit voltage, and then we're going to connect them up to the power station. So the open circuit voltage for the 3 Renogy panels in series is 67.8 volts. So let's go ahead and connect it up and see what happens. Now with the Renogy solar panels connected up to the power station, we're seeing around 546 to 548 watts charging input. Now remember, even with the VOC over 60 volts, this is still working. Now taking a look at the voltage again, with the solar panels under peak power, you can see the voltage drop down quite a bit, down to around 54 to 55 volts. Now I wanted to see what would happen if we used both charge controllers at the same time. So I took each of the solar arrays and plugged one of them into each charge controller, and now we're charging at a total of 1080 watts. So it's pretty cool that both charge controllers act independently from each other. For example, each of these solar arrays had different voltage and amperage amounts, but they still add together to get the total wattage. Now, it was also really cool to see that we could have higher than 60 volts input. Like I said, the engineering team gave me a total of 75 volts, so as long as you do not go over 75 volts VOC, you should be fine on the power station. Now, what about having solar panels connected 24/7? During low light conditions, some power stations have a relay that clicks on and off. To verify this was not an issue on the Ugreen power station, I connected 4 of these BougeRV 180 watt panels in a 2S 2P configuration. Checking the voltage open circuit, it was 46 volts. And having these solar panels connected 24/7, I did not see any issues with the relay clicking or any bugs while it was charging. So thumbs up to having solar panels connected all the time. So what do you guys think of the charging performance of the 2200? First off, the thing that I absolutely love is that this can take 75 volts VOC input from solar panels. That gives you much more freedom when choosing your solar panels that want to be compatible with this. For example, you could have 3 200 watt solar panels wired in series, and then on the other charge controller, you could have 3 200 watt solar panels wired in series. So you have 2 separate for 600 watts each, giving you the maximum 1200 watts input. A lot of other power stations with that hard 60 volt cutoff, you cannot put solar panels in a 3S configuration because the voltage is too high. So huge thumbs up to Ugreen for allowing up to 75 volts VOC. And you remember, once the solar panels have power going through them, that voltage drops down well below 60 volts. So pretty cool. Now, the fact that this charges fast with AC input, that's really good. There's no external charging bricks, and the fans are not loud while it's charging as well. Now, the only downside that I could see with this was the fact that this did not support AC charging and DC charging at the same time. So if you're charging with AC input, it's going to prioritize AC and it's going to stop DC input. Luckily, you do have dual MPPTs, so you could charge with solar and maybe your car alternator with like a boost converter. So at least you can dual charge like in a van life setup or in an RV setup, but with AC and DC input, it will not dual charge that way. Now, what about the customer service and warranty for the Ugreen power station? Well, here they have a card that states this has a 5-year warranty. Now, they do have chat support on their website. They also have an email, which is support@ugreen.com. Now, I emailed that, and I did get a 24-hour response, so good thumbs up there. They also list a few numbers that you can dial to get phone support. Now, unfortunately, when I dialed those, it was really busy, and after about 4 minutes on hold, it just came back with a message saying, "We're too busy right now, call back later." So kind of a bummer there. Maybe they can fix that in the future to be able to actually talk to someone over the phone, but it is nice that they have good customer service via email. Now, what about the actual build quality on this power station? Well, I really like how solid it is. All the buttons feel really good when you push them. Now, this comes in at about 56.5 pounds. That's what it showed on my scale. But the nice thing about this is this comes with a dolly. Now, this just snaps right into the dolly and it locks down. And it has these large wheels on the bottom. So I feel like you could easily move this around on, any hard surface, probably even packed dirt or grass just fine. It's going to have some issues with like sand or loose dirt, but overall, moving this around in your house with the dolly and even allowing an expansion battery on the top is going to make this so much easier to move. So I like that this comes with the dolly. You don't have to pay an additional cost for that. Now let's break down the smart app for the Ugreen power station. I've connected with Bluetooth. You can see the state of charge here in the middle and the temperature of the power station up here. Now scrolling down, you can see the wattage input, output, and estimated time till it's empty. You also have the ability to turn on the AC inverter, DC output, and USB ports remotely. For example, if I wanted to turn off the DC output, you can just flip that switch and it turns off. Now this also has a built-in flashlight up here. If you want to turn that on, you can just push any of these different options. And if you want to turn it off, you just tap it again. I think it's nice to have a built-in flashlight because it allows you to have a light if there's an emergency or a power outage. Up here at the top, you have additional settings. Right here, the screen timeout settings allow you to turn on and off the display and adjust the brightness. Operating modes are kind of like an eco mode. It allows you to turn off the power station if there's no activity after 5 hours, 2 hours, and then there's an always on mode, and I have it currently set to always on. Now the U-Turbo allows you to run purely resistive loads above the total output or the rated output of the inverter. So remember, that's only for purely resistive loads. Now battery preservation mode is pretty cool. If you enable this, it will actually put less stress on the battery. It charges to 90% and only discharges to 10%. So you get more charge cycles over the life of the battery. Now quiet mode allows you to charge the power station at a slow rate and also keeps the fans at a lower speed. And this actually works really well. It's super quiet when you use that. You can turn on and off the audio tones when you push certain buttons. And down here, you can adjust other settings like your DC charge input, the low battery alerts, and temperature units. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the firmware update. You have the ability to update the firmware. And if you click this search for updates, it will go out to the internet and look for a recent firmware update. And you can see that I'm currently up to date on the Power Station. So overall, this is a very simple app. It's really easy to use. Okay guys, now that we've finished all the tests on this Power Station, we have the performance numbers. So let's go ahead and put this through my new Power Station grading system. So why is this important? Well, it allows us to take all the performance numbers and then compare this Power Station to any other Power Station I've tested on the channel. Now you get to that by going to my website, clicking the Power Station tab, and then you can see everything in there. I'll include a link down to it in the video description. So let's go ahead and see how this one did. So up on the screen, you're going to see my new Power Station grading system. Now there are 20 requirements a Power Station has to meet in order to get a perfect score. Each one is worth a half point. At the bottom right, you have the grading scale. So let's see how the Power Roam did. So here are the results for the Ugreen Power Station. Really good here. The only thing that it did not meet was the supporting AC and DC charging at the same time. So it got a total score of 9.5 out of 10 points available, or an A final grade. So with a score of 9.5 points, it ties first place on my Power Station grading system. So you guys know that this checks a lot of the boxes that my viewers are looking for performance and feature set. Now remember, this has a really good price during the Black Friday sale, which is going on right now, $13.99 or 68 cents per watt hour, and I'll include the link to it down in the video description. Now, during the last portion of the video, I want to talk about some of the things that I like and dislike about the 2200. Now, usually when a Power Station does this well, there aren't too many downsides to complain about, so I'm going to get a little bit nitpicky here because I'd love to see this just refined to make the product even better. So first thing that I'd love to see change would be the dual charging from AC and DC input at the same time. Maybe there's a firmware update that they can allow that to happen. So that might be a simple fix. The other thing is the display. It's really dim, so I would like to see a little bit more contrast or brightness out of the display. And the third thing would be the actual flap for the charging ports. The fact that that comes down and just stays there, I believe that that's going to break if something drops on top of it. So definitely could see improvements with those there. As for the things that I love, you guys have heard me talk about it basically the whole video. Just this quick recap. I love that it has the high DC output. I do love that it has the higher voltage input, so up to 75 volts versus the standard 60 volt cutoff. Sure, it'd be even better if it had 150 volts input, but the fact that this has 75 volts allows you to use solar panels in a 3S configuration. I love how fast the UPS mode is, smart app connectivity, fast wall charging, really good power from the AC inverter. The list just goes on and on. This is a really good Power Station, guys. The last thing that I really like about it is the fact that this has that trolley that is attachable and detachable. You can get a really compact setup like it is here, and then if you want to move it around, throw it on the trolley. The Power Stations that have like the built-in wheels and handles can get a little bit bulky, so I think it's the best of both worlds to have a trolley that's usable, and then if you want a compact setup, just take it off the trolley and you're good to go. Well, now that we're coming to the end of the video, I request that you guys take a second to leave a comment about the Power Roam 2200. Leave your thoughts, your feelings, opinions about the Power Station because I love my interactions with my viewers, so thank you. If you liked the video, please smash the thumbs up button. It helps YouTube know that they should recommend this video out to others. And also a huge shout out to my channel members who are supporting the channel with a small monthly fee. Now, if you look down in the comments section, there are people with a little star next to their name. Go ahead and click that thumbs up button next to their name. Thank you guys so much. Lots of future videos coming out really soon. Hope you guys are excited for them. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.